Today I have a special guest who I've been wanting to talk to for quite some time now. Her name is Athena Walker, and she is a diagnosed psychopath who writes extensively on the topic of psychopathy. And in my opinion, she has the most extensive and engaging content on psychopathy available online. And she goes into a lot of depth about the psychopath experience, psychopath functioning, and also dispels some of the misconceptions and myths surrounding psychopathy. So, would you like to add anything to that?
Not that I can think of. That sounds pretty accurate, pretty thorough.
Right. So, in this interview, I want to discuss the differences between the schizoid personality and the psychopath. So, I want to start with early experiences and the developmental path that we each took to maybe look at some of the differences in our functioning. So, I want you to go back to like your first day at school and the first time you were separated from your parents. How did you feel?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. How did you feel about being put into a new environment and being away from your parents for an extensive amount of time?
I genuinely didn't notice. I mean, it was probably just a new experience for me, so cool, fun.
Right. Yeah, I'll say that from my perspective as well, that I wasn't particularly concerned. I just I am where I am and I'll just get on with it. So there wasn't any sort of anxiety or anything around that. So moving on to your school experience, how did you find connecting with the other children and interacting with them? Like, were you happy to play with other children? Did you initiate play with other children? Or would you say you were more of an observer?
I was more of I was going to do what I wanted to do. I didn't really think about other people. I didn't think about whether or not they wanted to play or what that would look like. What seemed interesting to me is what I would have engaged in. Considering other people is not something that is paramount to me. It's not the first thing that comes to my mind, or even really probably the 12th thing that comes to mind. It's something I have to intentionally consider. But when you're that age, they make you play with other children. So I got used to it. Yeah, it just was normal, but it wasn't something that was ever a desire of mine. I didn't have a need to be around other people in any way.
Right, I have a similar experience as well, because what I found is that I would naturally gravitate to go and play on my own or engage in some sort of activity on my own. But if a child did come over to me and approach me, I didn't mind playing or interacting with them. It wasn't a problem. I wasn't averse to it. But if you left me on my own to my own devices, I would just stay on my own until otherwise invited or sort of needing to interact with another child, because maybe sometimes there were activities that the teachers would set up where you had to do group play. But yeah, so I do relate to that. It's quite similar.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Did you have any conflict with other children, like arguments and fights?
Not that I recall. I mean, it wasn't. If somebody got angry with me, and regardless if they were a child or an adult, I just didn't care. So that was their problem, not mine. No reason to engage.
Right. I was a bit different there because I didn't really like strong emotions from other people and children. So if somebody was I don't know, angry with me, I would definitely feel it quite intensely. And that could sort of influence my behavior to some degree. I didn't really show how I felt. I didn't get angry back or react or respond verbally in those sort of ways. But it would definitely like, I would to avoid other people's emotions, and I wanted to avoid strong emotional responses from people. Fortunately, I didn't really get into a lot of situations where I was dealing with like angry kids or conflict. It was pretty smooth going for me, so it wasn't really an issue. I would say that more the anger of the teachers or the anger of adults was probably more of an issue and a concern.
Did you relate to their emotion? Could you understand the emotions that they were feeling? Did you think that they were real, or was that something that was totally foreign to you?
I thought that they were doing it to make me do something. So rather than thinking about what they internally experiencing, I thought that they're doing this because of me, because they want me to change, or I didn't really go deep into like why they felt angry. It's just they do feel angry, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for me it was any emotional expression for me was simply a means to an end. So for a
Mm-hmm.
good while, when I was very young, that's what I assumed everyone did. And then I understood as time went on that these were real emotions. I didn't understand them. I didn't care to interact with them, and I didn't care about them. But I at least began to understand that people had a different experience than my own.
Right. On that note, when I got older, when I was about say 14 or 15, I didn't believe in love, and I thought it was just fake, and I thought they were just like acting it out, and that wasn't real. Other emotions I did believe in. I believed in anger, but I didn't really believe in love. And I thought that maybe people were just like working themselves up into a state, but that really it wasn't really based on anything real. So that's one emotion that I would say that I didn't relate to, and I didn't really understand like why people felt it.
Hmm. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I had a similar experience. It's not an emotion, but I had a similar experience with addiction. I didn't understand it because I can't feel it. So to me, it didn't seem real. It seemed fake.
Right. So when you say like addiction, do you mean like sort of dependency on anything like substances or dependencies on objects as well?
That's right. All of it. Don't understand any of that.
Right. I would say that for me, I didn't really understand like possessiveness,
Oh,
like
yeah.
why people like when somebody like loses a toy, why do they care? Or when they lose like
Mm-hmm.
objects or physical things, like why does it matter like so much to them? It's like just get another one, you know? But
Exactly.
yeah, people seem to yeah, definitely have something more in the form of attachment than I did. And going back to the school situation with friends, what I found was that I didn't think about my friends when I wasn't at school. Like when they
Hmm.
were there, I would think about them, but I wouldn't go home and think about them. And I didn't think about interacting with them outside of school either.
Yeah, I would say that's pretty similar with me. I never felt the need to, unless it was something that was interesting or entertaining. Like if it was something that would break up the boredom, sure, I would
Mm,
probably go ride bikes with a kid or something. But it wasn't, oh, I need to spend time with this person. I miss this person. I want to be around them. I
mm,
would see them when I saw them, and if I didn't see them, they weren't on my mind.
right, yeah, it's quite similar in that way. Um, did you have much of an imagination as a child?
Yes, I've always had a very good imagination.
Right, okay. And did you think about the future very much? Like when you grow up, what you got to do?
People would ask me when I was a kid, and I would just answer something like, "Oh, I'll be a vet" or something like that because it was required. It felt like, but no, I never really thought about it. I didn't care. I still don't. That never became a thing for me.
Right, okay. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. And so when you were like in situations where most people would be competitive, like with examinations or sports or certain games, did you find that you had a strong competitive streak?
Only with myself. Being better than I was yesterday, that's the only thing that has ever driven me. I do not care what someone else does because I have no influence over it. I have that, me worrying about what someone else can do or considering what someone else can do has nothing to do with me. They're going to do what they're going to do. The only person that is going to have any effect on the world of how accomplished I am on something is me. So I was in ballet for a very long time. I was extremely hard on myself to the point where I would be very prone to injuries because I would push myself so hard. But I never considered what the other dancers were doing. I didn't care. Whether or not I got a solo, whether or not I, was a principal, whether or not I was in the corps, it didn't matter outside of what I put in.
But you were attached to the outcome, but not relative to other people.
I wasn't attached to the outcome. I just enjoyed ballet. So if I'm going to do ballet, I'm going to do it to the best of my ability.
Right. So I would say that I relate to some degree that I didn't find myself competing with other children. If I was in a game, I kind of didn't really care much if I lost, which made me probably not try as hard because I think it didn't mean anything to me. But if I was doing something like academically where I valued doing well in it, then I would care for myself. I would say that in general, part of my non-competitiveness is due to just basically just a lack of caring about the outcome of things, due to not having an attachment to the external world. Because with schizoids, we have an internal detachment from the external world, so we tend to devalue a lot of things in the external world, and we just value more what's inside our minds. And so for that reason, we can be quite sort of dismissive of the external circumstances and what's happening in the external world. And we tend to live in our heads, and we're a lot more invested in our own internal world than the external world. So it's sort of a bit different, but...
Yeah, it is a bit different. That's interesting.
Yeah. And I know that with psychopaths, that you don't have trust for other people, and that's something similar that schizoids have, but I think there may be a difference here, and I want to find that out. So whereas you don't have trust, do you have a strong distrust?
No, I just don't assume anyone is going to do anything until I've known them for an extremely long period of time. So if someone tells me, oh, I'm going to do X, and whether or not they do it invests in sort of their cognitive trust bank, okay? They will show themselves to do what they're going to do, and over a long period of time, they will gain some sort of measure of, I will then assume that what you say you're going to do is what you're going to do. But it's not just with me, it has to be with all the people around them, because I've watched people for a long time, so I know that if they act one way with you and one way with other people, the chances are that you will become the other people quite quickly. So it's always cognitive with me, but I don't distrust people. I just have a sort of a neutral stance, and you won't get any trust until there's been a very long period of time, and I mean over years, to show that there is a reason for me to bother.
Yeah, I don't have trust, and I relate to what you're saying, but I also have a distrust, which means that I kind of have low expectations of other people, and I suspect that if someone has an opportunity to fuck me over in some sort of way, that a lot of people would take that opportunity if it was easy for them and there were no consequences to that. And so that sort of adds to my wariness. I'm not paranoid. I don't walk around thinking that people are out to get me, or I don't think that I don't have to look over my shoulder all the time or anything like that. But it's just a general sense that other people are not to be trusted, and it's better to err on the side of distrust than trust. The neutral bit, just neither trusting nor distrusting, I don't think I can really sort of live in that realm.
Mm-hmm. So curiosity about that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find that you pick up on negative people or people who you cannot trust and you cannot trust faster than people around you?
There have been incidents of that. Yeah, like for sometimes I could just think that there's just something about someone that's just not, it's not right, and other people don't see it. And I'm not really sure where that is coming from. It's just some sort of a set, but I think it will come from movements and actions. Like I don't just look at someone on sight and come to that conclusion. I would have to see how they listen to their tone, their movements, like just little subtle like micro cues, I think, that somehow put together.
No, I agree with you. I notice that a lot of people who feel emotional trust tend to allow that emotion to guide them instead of their logic. And I think when you don't experience that, you're able to observe patterns a lot better than most people. So you'll pick up a pattern much faster subconsciously. You're like, that person cannot be trusted. They obviously are out for themselves. They're going to do something or they're going to cause problems. So yeah, I agree with that. And that's very similar to psychopathy. I pick up on people who should not be trusted at all. Pretty much, I mean, I wouldn't say immediately, but extremely quickly. And people tend to argue with me and they tend to say, oh, they're just really nice, they're this. And then of course, a couple weeks later, a month later, however long it takes, then they come back, oh, you were right about them. How did you know? Because I didn't trust them, because I can't trust them.
Right. Would you say that you're very in tune with the sensory world in general?
Could you repeat that?
Would you say that you're very in tune with the sensory world in general? Like,
go ahead.
Like, do you have a good relationship, like, with your body in relation to the world?
Yeah, please elaborate on that just a bit.
Yeah. So, for example, like, can you detect changes in temperature, like, quite quickly? And are you quite responsive? Like, when things happen around you, can you respond quickly to things? Can you interact with the world in a way where you're like very in the moment?
Yes.
Or yeah.
Yes, very much so.
Right. Okay. And we were just talking about reading body cues and body language, and about distrust and trusting. And there's something about that I wanted to follow on from.
Okay.
But I think I've lost it. Okay, I'll come back to that when it comes back to me.
Okay.
So, would you say that you experience hyper-awareness of your environment?
I would say no. And the reason I would say no is because when I go places with other people later on or during the moment, they'll point out to me, oh, that person was staring at you. I never even notice them because they are not important to me. None of that matters to me. However, I do pick up on if I can sense something around me, like somebody has negative intentions, I do pick up on that. But on general people, no, I don't even pay attention to them.
Right. Yeah, I differ in that sense because I'm on everyone in my environment. I want to know, like, how far or near everybody is from me, what they're doing, what trajectories they're going in, like where they're going to go next. Scanning their general energy. I'm probably more on people in my environment than objects on my environment. So I'd say that that's a point where we would differ in.
Yes, I would agree.
So moving on. So with like back to the school and games, did you enjoy playing games?
I don't really have a lot of memory from when I was like very young. Memory categorization for me is quite so there's no emotion that gets tied to memory. So it's just an event that has happened. I'll enjoy it at the time, but when I look back on it, it's just we went on this trip. It's a factual memory. It's not a, oh, we had so much fun. So I don't really remember things like that. I mean, I don't recall it being some sort of inconvenience in the sense, I mean, it broke up the school day, I would assume.
Mm.
To me, school was quite boring, so.
Would you say now, though, that you prefer more sort of like intellectual games or physically based games like sports?
I don't know, intellectually, I'd much prefer. I've never been, other than ballet. Ballet certainly does beat up your body, but I've never been interested in things like soccer, or softball, or baseball, or football, or anything like that. So none of that has ever interested me. I found all of that to be quite boring. Ballet was intriguing because it was extremely difficult. I like difficult things. So that's what kept me going until, of course, it is damaging. So I ended up quitting because of that. But yeah, games, more intellectual. I'm not really interested in going out and running around a field.
Mm-hmm. Did you get in trouble much at school?
If you ask my parents, I'm sure they would tell you that I did. If you ask me, I don't know. I didn't really pay attention.
Okay, right. Okay. So like moving on to like your older age, like in the teenage years, did you spend much time with other kids outside of school, like hanging out?
Not
No.
really. I had people that enjoyed hanging out with me. And that's sort of for the very earlier parts of my life into teenage years is probably the best way to describe it. I had people who enjoyed hanging out with me. Their presence was a give or take. Some people I found more interesting than others, but for the most part, they were simply there. They were entertaining at the moment. But when I went home, I was much more interested in being by myself. I didn't want to. I was not the teenager on the phone. I didn't go hang out a bunch of places. That just wasn't interesting to me. I was much more interested in doing what I wanted to do. And very rarely what I want to do will include other people.
Right. Okay. And did you find as well that like their interests were quite different from yours? Like, for example, like a lot of teenagers, they seem to be into like celebrities and pop stars and that sort of thing. And I imagine you might have been different from that.
I was definitely different from that in the sense that I was not interested in any of that. If my friends were into that sort of thing, I don't think they ever told me. Just because,
Right.
or if they did, I don't remember.
Right. And were you like very into your schoolwork or
No.
no?
I hated school. I mean, as much as I could hate anything, I did not want to go. I found it incredibly boring. I would spend all of my time reading under my desk because I had no interest in what was going on. No, I never cared about my schoolwork. If it hadn't been for my parents making me do it, I would never have done any of it.
Right. That's quite interesting. I was like a lot into schoolwork because I didn't really have any sort of physical pursuits or interests as much. I was a lot more into like sort of intellectualization and just reading and studying, and I think as well like not into watching television because I tend to dissociate from the external world quite a bit, so that makes watching television a bit like you miss a lot of things and you have to fill things in, and plus the content of the television, I didn't really resonate with it so much, like with TV programs. And I think you might relate to this because television programs tend to depict like normality, and there was a lot of things about normality that I found kind of quite alien to me. Like I didn't really personally relate to the people that I saw on television. Did you find that as well?
Oh, absolutely. But it was an excellent tutor on how to mimic emotions for me.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So did you find that you mimicked emotions for manipulative purposes?
I mimicked emotion. I personally have the opinion that all human interaction is manipulation, and I don't consider manipulation a negative thing. I consider it just a normal thing, because you're interacting with another person to get your wants and your needs met, which in and of itself is manipulation. So of course everything I did was manipulative because I wanted to do what I wanted to do, and I also knew that if I looked strange, I did not enjoy the outcome of people questioning me or making that a thing that I had to pay attention to. So it was easier to blend in than it was to not. So for me, yes, of course it was done for manipulation. If you're asking if I did it for manipulation for negative things, absolutely I did.
Right. That's quite interesting. So would you say that you had any issues with being compliant with other people? Like if somebody asked you to do something, like what sort of basis would you decide whether or not to be compliant with other people or not?
Mostly about would disagreeing benefit me in any way. If my parents told me you need to do these chores, and my response to it is, no, I'm going to throw a fit, because fits do work. Not necessarily with my parents, but they work with other people. If I throw a fit, the outcome is what? I lose this privilege or that privilege. That's overall a negative, so I'm not going to do that. So I'd be compliant. However, if it was interesting to me, I might. I did have a teacher that I enjoyed having a back and forth with him because he was fun. So for him, yeah, I would definitely be more engaged in that because it was interesting to me. But it was never like, oh, I want to just be a troublesome child for the sense of it. I will admit I was a troublesome child, but it wasn't, in many ways, it wasn't intentional. A lot of it had to do with just, that was how I was in the world. So I just did what I was going to do. It took a very long time to learn to have a different perspective, cognitive empathy, to understand that there are long-term negative consequences based on my choices. And if I don't play that out to the end, then I put myself in positions where I probably shouldn't be.
Right. Okay. Did you find though that when you got into a situation that like had a negative outcome, that you found it quite easy to get over the negativity of the outcome that you created?
No, there was nothing to get over. It was just a minor inconvenience.
Right. Okay.
It's one of the reasons why psychopaths do not learn from experience. There's no shame, there's no guilt, there's no that made me feel sad. There's none of that. So unless there is the cognitive ability to think about what do you prefer, because it's always about what I prefer. It's always about my preferred outcome. Unless you can demonstrate to a psychopath to think that way, what is the preferred outcome for me? There's no reason to correct anything negative because it's not negative to us. It just is.
Right. Yeah. That just makes sense. I would say that like for me, like the greatest fear I would have had is fear of physical confrontation and getting into physical altercations. I didn't really mind things like getting grounded. That was just a joke. I didn't even see how that was a punishment. Oh, I get to stay in my room all day, you know? Yeah.
Oh no, not that.
Maybe that's what I should have done so I could get grounded more. Like, but yeah. So it's just the physical altercations as a punishment. I think it was the greatest fear, but a lot of punishments really weren't really a problem. The reason why I was very well behaved at school, very well behaved, and the reason why I was well behaved is because I didn't want to interact with the teachers. I didn't want to have any dialogue or any sort of socialization, and I don't want to be told what to do. Like, I want to know, okay, what are the rules? What standards do you expect? And then I'll just get on with it. And I don't want anybody sort of like micromanaging me, or not even micromanaging, just telling me anything. Like, just
you'd rather just blend into the background.
Yeah. So
you don't want to be called on. You don't want them to tell you that you didn't do something on your homework correctly. You don't want to be called in front to do a presentation. You just want to be the person that nobody even notices. Never raise your hand, I bet.
True. Yeah. The thing is, it's so funny because when the children used to raise their hands, I used to wonder why they did it. Like, I was thinking, why do you care to give the answer? You know,
eagerness to be approved upon.
This is something that I learned after a while because like it really meant something. Some of them would be putting their hands up so high, like, and they'd be like, you know, really wanting to get picked. And I just sit and watch them. And then after, like, sometimes, like, they get in some situations where they got the answer wrong, I'll just sit there, because I always just thought about things in my head. I didn't need to speak. I don't need to say it out. No one needs to know. But after a while, if nobody else got it right, I might just say it out. Like, I say, no, it's blah, blah, blah. Like, do you know what I mean? Just to finish it off.
Yeah, exactly. I've done. I think I did that as well. One of the things that I dealt with a lot when I was in school was, like I said, I read underneath my desk. I have the ability to pay attention to both things. So if the teacher ever did the, you know, try to gotcha moment,
because they know I'm not paying attention, or at least they think I'm not, because I have my head clearly bowed in reading a book, they'd ask me a question, I'd answer it, and they'd get very annoyed because they assume that they had me and like, oh, you weren't paying attention. It's like, I know what you're talking about. I already read the chapter. Here's the answer. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
That was not appreciated behavior by teachers. I'm sure of that, but I still did it and I didn't care.
Right. It sounds like that you wanted to just like govern your own path.
Yes.
And,
I wanted to be left alone. I wanted to do what I wanted to do. And I saw no point in tests. I saw no point in homework. I figured if you could demonstrate proficiency in whatever it is that they're trying to teach, you should just be allowed to do whatever you want.
Right. You know what? There was a funny thing about me, what I think's funny anyway, was that after you finished all your work, they said that you can go and play with toys or to have like a playtime and stuff like that. And I didn't like that at all because I had like no interest in like playing with objects. And I just wanted to like sort of like do more classwork and just more classwork and more classwork, because it's really the only thing that interested me. And the other kids, they're just different. They just like prefer to, a lot of them, they sort of prefer to play and didn't really like doing the work. So I was a bit back to front in that way.
Yeah, no, I can understand that.
So I wanted to ask you, do you regard yourselves to be an introvert or an extrovert?
Neither. I am whatever the situation requires of me. If it's we're going to go to a New Year's Eve party and it's time to put on the smile and be the life of the party, or at least part of it, then cool, I can do that. Doesn't bother me. If it's time to stay home and play video games and not talk to anybody for 2 weeks, fine, I can do that.
Right. And have you always like been comfortable like asking for help when you need it?
No. I would say no to that. I would rather, if I were terribly ill, I would crawl across a house for 4 hours before I would ask somebody to go get something for me.
Yeah, I relate to that.
It's a negative thing for sure. In the general scheme of things, it's negative. But yeah, I'm fiercely independent. I do not want your help. I will do it myself.
Do you think that's because you feel like you want to prove competence to yourself, or maybe because you just don't want to rely on other people?
Well, I don't think it's about proving competence to myself, because it's never been like a, should I do this? Should I not do this? It's never been that. It's just the way I am. It takes somebody else stepping in and saying, no, sit down. I will get that. You need to stop. You're going to hurt yourself. So for me, it's always been I'm just wired that way. I've never had the interest or the ability really to rely on other people. It's a cognitive choice for me, and it's not one that I readily make. And I don't mean that in the sense that there's some sort of negativity there. It's just not. Every cognitive choice when it comes to human interaction, I have to prioritize it. So asking someone how their day is a cognitive choice. Noticing when they need help is a cognitive choice. Understanding when someone is not well, that's a cognitive choice. All of those things are choices, and I have to prioritize them based on the situation. Very, very rarely am I going to prioritize, I can't get that thing down from that high shelf. Maybe I should ask my significant other. I will find a way to crawl up the cabinets to get whatever it is that I need until I have him show up and be like, what are you doing? I don't get that. What is wrong with you? So, yeah, it's a cognitive choice I'm not apt to make.
Yeah, I'll definitely say that. As a schizoid, I experience Electrify Man, which means I have difficulty reading and expressing my true emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And basically what this means is that I'm detached from my emotions. So I experience emotions, but I'm detached from them at the same time. So my body is registering emotion, but my mind is distant from the emotion.
Interesting.
And so what I'll do is I have to kind of try and work out how I might be feeling. And so that's where the cognitive sort of aspect comes on. So I'll intellectualize that this is happening, therefore this, therefore that, and I'm probably this because of that, and I might be this because of that.
Okay.
It's just all very sort of intellectualized. And like I could like be feeling something like tiredness and not realize it, and someone has to tell me you're really tired. It's like, am I? Like, I don't know.
Well, it's interesting because it sounds like you require cognitive empathy of yourself to be able to understand how you're feeling. That's interesting.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I've developed this cognitive empathy, and it extends to other people as well, because I can't personally put myself emotionally in their shoes to know how internally they're feeling per se, but I can understand that theoretically that, yeah, I can understand that must feel bad, or that must feel good, or that must be unsettling, that sort of general principalities.
Yeah, that's pretty much how it is for me, except for I don't have anywhere in me in a lot of those negative emotions. I don't have a core understanding of it. I've never experienced it myself. So for example, if somebody's sad about something, okay, their mother died. They are sad. Behave towards them as though they are sad, because that is what they are right now. But I don't have a internal sad, that's what that feels like, and I know why it feels that way. That is lacking for me. So it's all a cognitive process.
Right, yeah. Because like sometimes I could be like, I think I'm probably a bit sad, or I think I'm this. But the one strong emotion I have is fear. I know when I'm afraid, and I feel afraid in its fullness when I do feel it. But I have the ability to be in situations where other people would be afraid in, where I can just detach from the fear. But there's some situations where obviously, like if I don't know, where I feel fear, where I suppose I can't easily detach from it, but it's never really caused me any problems. Like a lot of people wouldn't see it or wouldn't notice it, and it wouldn't like hold me back from doing anything that I need to do really. But
Okay,
fear can be quite powerful.
I have a question for you about fear then. For you, is fear, what role does it play? Is it something that, oh, this is something I can feel strongly, I would like to feel it more, or is it something that you would rather avoid?
No, I'd rather avoid it at all cost. If anything, that I would probably try to suppress it and detach from it, because I don't. Thing is, I have this sort of like schizoids. We have a fear of engulfment, which means that we have a fear of being overwhelmed by the strength of our own emotions.
Okay.
So that's where the detachment comes from, and we have like a mind-body split, which occurs, I think, early in infancy, which means detachment from the actual physical body, and emotions are felt in the body. So through detaching from our physical bodies, we can create a distance with our between us and our emotions. So I definitely don't want to feel fear more. There were times as well, and this is something that was interesting, because I was reading one of your articles you wrote about emotions on your blog, and you were saying that you have a flight or flight response, but you don't kind of have like the emotion of it.
Right. That distinct separation between what the body does with adrenaline and the emotion that the brain experiences. You can't, if your body feels that it's in danger, its primal instincts are to protect you in whatever way possible, psychopath or not. That's still a function. It doesn't go away. Now, some people are they don't really experience it because they're insensitive to it. I'm fairly insensitive to it. However, I can still experience, like, if there's a very serious situation, my body still will get the adrenaline. It's like, okay, we have to move or we have to do something. But I don't experience the emotional part. That's completely absent.
Right. And also I understand that you don't have like imaginary fears. Like,
No.
So when you were little, you weren't like scared of like monsters or ghosts or.
I thought they were really interesting.
Mm.
I was, of course, and I think all children are, the why child, and I always ask the questions. But well, why does that exist? What is it like? Where does it live? Right. Why does it live under my bed? There's stuff under there. Why does it want to be there? Why is it in my closet? My closet's a mess. I always wanted to ask these questions, and my parents were just baffled by it. I had an experience. I wrote about this. It was my sister had friends over. They were watching The Shining, and I had never seen it. My parents were the type that really tried to keep me from, oh, that could scar you, so we'll keep you away from it. No horror movies when you're 7 or 6 or however old I was. Well, they were screaming, and I kept hearing them. I had already been sent to bed. I kept hearing them. I walked out, and they're sitting on a couch, so I'm behind the couch, and I'm just watching what they're watching, and they're screaming, and they're freaking out, and I'm like, I don't understand what you are scared of. And finally, I just said, what are you screaming about? And that made them jump 18 feet in the air practically, because they were so startled that I was there. But I could not understand what they were scared about. I was like, what is this? What? And I, of course, got sent back to bed and was in trouble. But I found that baffling. And I remember that because I was so baffled, I was like, what is scary about this? And yeah, so for me, I was just curious. But why though? Why though?
I think the power of suggestion.
Say again?
Sorry, what did you just say?
Oh, I said my parents, of course, didn't want to answer those questions. They didn't want to, as they saw it, scar their child for life with talking about, vampires or zombies or whatever. But I wanted to know. I was curious.
Like, I felt like I wasn't like scared of sort of the vampires and zombies because I have never seen them before, but I was afraid of ghosts because I saw ghosts for some reason when I was little. I used to see ghosts. It stopped when I was 7, thank goodness, because it was just, and the weird thing was they were just like people, but they were like statues in the room just standing there, but I knew that they weren't like sort of really there, but that stopped. So, so that I did sort of have a fear.
I wonder why they were statues. That's odd. But I've heard of things like that. I think that there are definitely things I do not know about, I do not understand, and I do not try to question them. I have had enough experiences myself that I know there's definitely something beyond what I can see. So I don't, for me, but I always am curious about the different ways they manifest. So statues or passing through or shadows or being exactly where they were when they died and just standing there. I mean, all of these things, I'm like, okay, what causes that? Why are they like that? And I wish I could ask. I just
wanted it to stop. Like, I was like, I don't care what they are, why they're there, how they died, or if they're even ghosts, or if it's me just imagining it. I just want it to stop, and it stopped.
That would be a distinct difference between us. I would have walked right up to one and be like, why are you like this? What is happening right now? What are you doing here?
No, I would have been terrified because you just don't know if it can just appear in your room. What else can it do to you?
I probably would have challenged it. Scratch me. I want to see you do it. Do it now. Do it. You're in this house. I own you. Come on. No, I'm kidding.
That's funny. Yeah. I mean, it's also like I've had this fear of the unknown. Like, and also fear of what's it having World War III. Like I've got over that one now. That's gone. But when I was little, growing up, I was sort of scared of like every wars, the end of the world, like sort of grand scale sort of things.
Is that the existential threat I've heard about?
Yeah, it is linked to that because like there's a lot of like questioning about the world, like, and the meaning of the world. How did I get here? Well, I know how I got here, like physically,
right?
But I mean, like,
bigger than that.
It's like it felt to me like I was just in a really weird alien place, and I had to sort of like try to figure it all out on my own, because I didn't feel like I could ask anyone the questions I had in my mind because I just didn't feel that I wanted to speak to people, and they didn't. It seemed like that they probably wouldn't have the answers anyway. But the existential thing, it's like sort of like, because I have like a lack of identity, like I don't really have a strong sense of self. I've just felt like a ghost to myself. Like I'm just sort of floating through this world, and it's like, you know, just sort of observing all the things that are happening and trying to make sense of it all. And also the fear of death was very strong in me. And, you know, it's like, it just brings up a lot of questions about life. So do you have any sort of fear of death or any sort of fears?
Oh, no, not at all. I've almost died a few times. It's never changed my perspective on it. It just is what it is. When it happens, it happens. And no, I have no idea what comes next, but I think that makes it more interesting.
Right. I think that with time, though, like, I mean, it's more when I was younger, like, I had a lot of fears, but with time, I sort of overcome them one by one. And what I found is I've overcome them through intellectualization, through like sort of thinking, well, I suppose it does come down to what you're saying at the end of the day. At the end of the day, it is what it is. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. There's no point like threatening about it, because then you're just losing quality of life. It might not happen anyway, you know, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So the rationalization has helped me to overcome my fears, but they were there to start with.
Right. And when you're a child, rationalization is not exactly a strong suit. That's something that's learned.
Yeah.
So you have to learn how to be able to interact with those things in a way that makes them less scary, I guess. I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you're probably not like a horror movie fan or scary video games or anything like that.
No, it's not because it's so scary, really, because I'm not. The most scariest film I think I might have watched was The Omen, but I was young. I watched a lot of horrors as a child. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. And like there was something called like Hammer House of Horror that used to come on in England, and it was just a series about just horror scenes. It was really realistic, like real to life, just like everyday events. Like, for example, like in one of them, the guy went to turn on the bath tap and all this blood came out. It's just sort of like, you know, different things. But that scared me. And then I think maybe being exposed to all of that stuff as a child, I sort of overcame it. And yeah, I don't like gore though. Like, I don't like to watch excessive violence.
Yeah, it gets. I find that rather boring, actually. I know a lot of people think, oh, you're a psychopath, you must really like that stuff. No, not really. I find it quite just, yeah, seen it all. Who cares?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, the reason I asked about the horror movies is because I assume, because you were talking about a lot of different things that you intellectually work through, and a lot of horror movies will try to capitalize on different types of fear, different types, psychological, physical, like dread of being hurt, dread of being chased, all these different things. And I was curious if that in any way actually helped you get through that, or if that's just something you don't really want to be around. Also, horror movies are rather predictable, so they get kind of boring.
Yeah, I think that I feel them strongly when there's a lot of sort of like gore. Like it's not when there's like people like getting tortured, and like I kind of feel like it's happening to me. I kind of got this weird sort of empathy for sort of more like physical things than emotional things. It's stronger. So if I see somebody like get stabbed, I will like in my body. I feel like kind of like as if I'd imagine being in their physical position, what that would feel like. So I've got definitely higher sort of empathy for physical pain than for like the sort of emotional side of things, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, of course, it's the same. Intellectual, emotional, physical. It's just like, oh, okay.
Right. Do you think that like having like a lack of emotions, not feeling things like fear, has influenced like your motivation in any way, or do you think that's like a separate thing? Like, do you have to like cognitively work yourself up into motivation?
Oh, if there's something I want to do, I'm going to do it, regardless of how difficult it is. I'm just going to figure it out. It's more interest that drives me than anything, and I can lose interest in something quickly. So I could be very interested in something like, oh, I'm going to do this, it'll be fun, and then, found something else to do. Lack of fear definitely has an influence in my life. I certainly have put myself in very negative, dangerous situations that to me seemed fine. I wouldn't have thought about them being horrible or scary or anything of the sort, because they weren't to me. They're just something to do. But they don't motivate me in the sense of, oh, I don't lack fear, so I can go do that thing. To me, it's normal. So I personally don't understand the actual presence of fear. I can't motivate myself by something that I don't understand in the first place. To me, it's just normal for it to not be present.
Right. Yeah, I think that with me, because of the detachment from the fear in certain situations, it may have caused me to be in situations that maybe weren't good for me, or maybe I shouldn't have been, because I was detached from the feeling of the fear.
Mm-hmm.
But that's in a generalized sense. But if a specific situation came on top, then it would come in. If it was real, if it was a real, that sort of direct threat, I would definitely feel it more. But I would never been adventurous or brave, or in the sense of like just sort of like, I don't know, like, I mean, I suppose I have kind of been, I've traveled like to lots of different countries on my own and stuff like that. But
I mean, most people would assume that would be considered brave.
I suppose so. Yeah.
Most people would put that in there are a lot of people who won't even go to the movies by themselves.
Yeah, but I just never really thought of it as anything. It's just like, I don't know.
That's pretty much how I am.
But when I think about it, there's probably quite a few situations I've been in that people would say that, that I have been brave, but I haven't felt brave. You know?
Yeah, I don't understand the concept of bravery either. People say it, but I think that you have to experience the fear that you have to overcome in that moment to really be brave. And since if I don't feel fear, or you're detached from your fear, I don't know that that's necessarily bravery. It just simply is an event that happened that you did, or I did, and it was fun for the time being, and other people are, I don't know, horrified or marveled by it. Either way.
It's that fear of flying. Like, I found a lot of people, they have a fear of just flying itself.
Yes.
And when I remember one time I was in Turbulent on a plane, and everybody was like, you know, they're just a bit probably saying their prayers, you know, and I just went to sleep. I was just like, I didn't enjoy it.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's like a roller coaster. I think it's a lot of fun. People get very frightened. I'm like, woohoo, hit that harder. Come on.
No, I just thought I'm just going to switch off, because I didn't enjoy it, and I didn't like other people's responses, because sometimes other people can set me off more. Like when other people start to get, you know, then I thought, you know what, I'm just out. So I thought, I'm just going to have a nice relaxing sleep now, like, and just get out of it. If the plane crashes, well, it crashes, you know. What
there's nothing you can do about it. What are you stressing out about?
Yeah, so that was that.
I've never understood that. Why are you so frightened? There's nothing you can do. If the plane goes down, it's going to go down. Just, it's fine. And besides, it's fun.
Yeah, no, it's not.
It is safe.
Goodness. So, like, do you ever feel like, if you ever felt like any sort of disconnect from the physical world, have you ever felt like you're in a dream, or that you're doing things on autopilot and not realizing what you're doing, and you realize, oh, I'm doing this, and you just sort of come into realization midway in a task or something like that?
I wouldn't know what you were talking about had it not been for one event in my life, and that is that I got meningitis. And when I was recovering from it for a few weeks after I was through the worst of it, I really did have sort of that sensation, because my brain was still recovering, and I had this weird sort of, it wasn't quite a disconnect. It was more like hazy, dreamy like. And it didn't last for very long, but I certainly remember it because it was very different from my norm. And yeah, so I can understand to a degree what you're talking about, but not for an emotional reason, but because my brain was actually compromised at the time.
Right. Yeah, because, you know, as schizoid, you know, a lot of times I can go into a room and do something, and do it in a sort of a state where I'm not really connected to it, and then sort of maybe not realize I did it, then realize I did do it, you know. So sort of like doing things automatically without really being fully consciously engaged in what you're doing.
Do you ever find that might put you at risk? Like, do you ever do it with like cooking in the kitchen or anything like that?
Not so much with cooking. When I was younger, I had like a ton of accidents. I cut myself with knives. I burned myself. oh my goodness, I was having so many accidents, and as I've got older, I've developed some more of a fear towards hurting myself, and that sort of kind of the adrenaline of that kind of keeps me more conscious when I'm doing things just like, you know, a bit edgy. Like, you know, like for example, like with crossing roads, like I have to always, because I have dissociation, I'm afraid I'm going to get run over. I'm going to just walk into a road and just get run over. So well, not afraid now, but I used to be. So I've developed a sort of a fear, a cognitive fear around roads, so that I'll always make sure that I pay attention, because I know that my dissociation puts me at risk of a lot of things. And also that other fear that, like, you know, that you're going to do something like commit a crime and not realize you did it. But now I'm a lot more in touch with the physical world than I used to be. But when I was younger, there was this fear, and there was also a fear as well that I could be a threat to other people somehow. Yeah, like I had a fear, like, you know, I've not hurting people, like almost like that. I don't know, I had this ability to hurt people, and I think that might have come from, like, apparently with schizoids in early infancy, that some of us, like, if our parents are cold, or if we don't have a connection with them, and the parent has like negative facial expressions, we feel like we've hurt the parent or we've distressed them in some way, that we're causing the parent harm. And so then that feeling that you're going to cause people harm can sort of stay with you, even if you've got no like direct intention or plan to do so.
That's interesting. I mean, I was going to ask if your fear of hurting others by chance was sort of a projection, and it sounds like it sort of is.
I mean, I've got a lot more confidence in myself now. Like with time's proved that, you know, I'm not a danger to anyone, you know. So right. I'm okay now, but it's just something that I had to get over when I was younger, you know, things like that. But yeah, there's a lot of sort of psychological like isms and schisms, I think, with schizoidism that I don't see in psychopathy. I think with psychopathy, it seems to be a lot more sort of straightforward and sort of grounded. Whereas with the, for example, like from your blog, I understand you're born a psychopath because you don't have the receptors to process oxytocin, right? And that's the standard state for you. Whereas with schizoids, there are some that are autistic. With schizoids that are born neurotypical, we have to do sort of mind voodoo, like sort of to get ourselves into the state where our emotions are detached from, and where we, I mean, we're not consciously doing it. It's just what I'm saying is we go through a series of mental processes that leads to the detachment. So, and part of that is the physical dissociation. So there's a lot more sort of different things that are going on in the state. Whereas with the psychopath, it seems to me that your state is more like straightforward. There's no, you know, it seems really pure, like nice. Yeah. I'm not saying I'm not pure, but
it sounds to me like you're speaking about an adaptation versus an innate.
Right, that's right. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Right. So it's a little bit different there. Shu, how are you for time?
I'm all right for right now.
All right. Okay. Cool. Great. So I wanted to ask you about like leaving home and adapting into adult responsibilities, and how that went for you. Like,
oh, I decided I wanted to move out, found an apartment, and moved out.
Did you find it hard to adjust to adult life, like with responsibilities, like paying bills and stuff like that?
Nope. Actually, I was. My parents my parents are very responsible people, and they taught me the process of being very responsible. And they had, I wouldn't call them high expectations; they were consistent expectations. So the way that I was sort of, the only way to teach a psychopath is by first having consistency. You have to, and also be able to explain cognitively why this is the good thing. This is the right way to be. This is the right way to behave. So they did that with me with rewards, which is pretty much the only way to get me to do anything, is give me something I want and I'll do whatever you want. So they learned that, and they taught me very early that if you do this, then you can do this. And so I've always, my whole life, had this sort of cognitive process of I get what I want when all the things that I need to do are done. So that just is what adulthood is for the most part. Just do what you have to do, and then you can do whatever you want.
Right. So I left home quite young, like I was about 16.
Mm-hmm.
And the adult world was a bit of a shock to me because, I mean, at school I was all right. I had things covered. There was no problems there. But the adult world, it's got like different requirements. So mainly it's the difficulties with interpersonal communication and like sort of just having to have relationships with people that I didn't have to have in the past, you know. So that was a little bit tricky. I didn't have any problem with responsibilities and paying bills and stuff like that. That really wasn't a problem for me. I think that was just the main thing about adulthood. So like when you moved into the adult world, did you find that you got on better with the adults than you did when you were children? Were you finding it like more appealing to have relationships with people?
For the most part, most of my relationships were with adults already. I really didn't have a lot of time for the idea of, teenagers and what they like to do, or college kids, what they like to. None of that appealed to me. Like, oh, go out and drink. Oh, fun. Have fun with that. None of that really appealed to me. So if I was going to have a conversation with somebody, I needed them to be rational. I needed to be able to have an intellectual discussion with them. I really distanced myself, I think, from a lot of the, first loves, the obsessions, the crushes, all of that. I just didn't understand it, and I didn't have a place for it. I just didn't really want to engage with that. So for me, that had already been a thing for me. I got on very well with people. I'd already learned by that point to adapt and mask in however way I needed to interact with the person and make them feel comfortable. So that was just normal, and I could do that with adults very easily. I'd always been able to do it very easily. So yeah, that was really just normal for me.
Okay. So it's like, it sounds like you like developed like really good social skills, really, that your social skills met your needs so that there wasn't really any difficulty in navigating your way through society or anything like that. You had it covered at that point. It was good.
Yeah, I often get the, put Athena over there. She can talk to anyone. She can talk to that person. Whoever it is, it's uncomfortable for anybody else to talk to. We go have Athena do it. Okay.
Right. I think I did develop my masking skills. So like by the time I got to about 21, I was engaged in a lot of sort of role playing activities, I learned to play a part and I could adapt to whoever I was talking to. But the thing is, it wasn't really with the intention of getting my needs met or the intention of having anything really. There wasn't so much that sort of personal goal thing. Apart from, I would say that, it depends on the situation, but I would say that I was on a mission to understand humanity. And a lot of my interactions were so that I could elevate my social skills, so that I could develop myself, so that it got progressively easier to navigate through social situations, which was a necessity, not because I wanted to be in social situations for fun or enjoyment, but it's just like a part of life that I knew that I had to either get on with or literally be stuck in my house like forever. So I sort of threw myself out into the world and sort of learned to swim,
Yeah, that makes sense. So for you, going into role playing and things of that sort was about getting your need of social and human understanding to be sharper. Makes sense. Interesting. Interesting method of doing so. I actually never thought about role playing in that regard.
Yeah. I mean, at the time, I didn't really think about it as role playing, but now when I reflect back on it, it's like I was just adopting different personas, sort of experimenting with different personas and stuff like that to see
what works.
To learn. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and but still, I think really I still wasn't communicating my needs or trying to get other people to really meet my needs and stuff like that. But we all do have things that we want. Like, I suppose, like, you could say that going to work in a way is meeting your needs, isn't it? Like,
No, absolutely. Going to work gets your wants and needs met by giving you money. It also gives you skills and makes you employable to other people. All of those things are very valuable. That's why I say people use such a negative idea when it comes to manipulation. They have this, and it really isn't. If you just think about what it is to manipulate something, is to handle it, to move it around. That's it. You're manipulating an object. You're manipulating a person. You're just trying to interact in the world in a way that gets you what you want and what you need. And that could be, if you're an emotional person, it could be that you want to get love, you want to get acceptance, and you will behave in the way that you need to in order to gain that from other people. Maybe you want objects, maybe you want things, maybe you want advancement in your career, maybe you want to understand how to keep your house nice. All of these things are all about what it is in your life that benefits you. It's not a negative thing. It just simply is. Is there toxic manipulation? Sure. Of course there is. But it's different than just manipulation.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think everything in life is transactional. Yeah. And it's like every relationship that people get into, do get two people, each person wants something, you know? Yeah. And it's just about whether they're like want the same thing or not, etc., etc.
And each one brings their own aspects to the relationship. They interact in their own unique ways, and whether or not those ways work or don't work has to do with whether or not those two people are compatible. But it still comes down to each one wants their wants and their needs met, and if they get those done by getting someone else's wants and needs met, it's definitely transactional. Not a negative thing, but people find that very dismissive of the emotional content of it. And I find the emotional content sort of clouds the idea of what it actually is. Like, I understand emotions are very sacrosanct to a lot of people, and they feel like, oh, I feel this way, and you're saying that it's this transactional, sterile thing, and because you're saying that, I feel offended. And it's like, it's not offensive, it just is.
Yeah, when you look at the bottom line, is what, yeah, I agree with you. So before I go on to my last question, I have one question before that, which is, do you get socially drained by being around other people?
No, not really. They can annoy me though, which, you know, I suppose that's a version of that. It's more of a, okay, I just don't really want to have to mask and meet whatever this is. And it could be a variety of things. It could be that they're upset about something, and meeting that need for them is, for me, the mask is helping them through whatever it is that they are going through without telling them what I really think. Because honestly, most of the time my response would be, this is ridiculous, you're being stupid, knock it off. And that doesn't go very well. So I have to be someone else. I have to say other things. I can get to the point where I'm just, it doesn't matter how many times I've said it or been nice about it or whatever, they are still in whatever emotional state they're in, and I'm just sort of done. It's not that I'm drained. It's just, okay, well, this isn't going anywhere. I have other things to do.
It's like you've exhausted your arsenal. Like, you've tried everything you can, and it's like, well, you know, it's kind of on them now, really, you know.
Yeah, and it's usually with the people that know what I am. They know I'm psychopathic, so they understand there's going to be a certain point in time where it's just like, okay, well, I've done everything I can for you, and I don't know what else to tell you.
Right. Do all your friends and your family know that you're a psychopath?
My family has no idea, and they will never know.
Okay.
And no, not all my friends, just the people who are closest to me. And yes, they know. They've known for quite a while. If you look through my blog, you'll see a friend of mine is writing about some of her interactions, understandings of what it's like to be around me. Just so people get sort of a different perspective, because I think one perspective can always be washed through a light of, well, like, I don't feel like I do anything. Not that I don't feel like I do anything wrong. I just don't understand the wrong things emotionally that harm people. So it's better to have that perspective. You know what I mean? So they know if they're closest to me. If they aren't close to me, they have no idea.
Right. Yeah. And when you talk about things that emotionally harm people, it's like that's part of the reason why I don't really like to really get too close to people, because I found in the past that I really hurt people's feelings. And I just think I'm the most reasonable kind of person. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, I've never intentionally gone out, like, if anything, I'll try not to piss someone off. You know, that's my attitude. If I can avoid a conflict or any trouble or disagreement, I would. But at the same time, I still somehow manage to hurt people's feelings. And I find it astounding, like that, mainly females.
Yeah, no kidding.
Every
5 minutes, man.
And they can be like holding on to these
forever.
Yeah, and it's like,
remember that thing you did to me in 3rd grade? No, I didn't. Did I know you in 3rd grade? What is happening right now?
And it's like a minefield. It's like trying to like sort of get through life without like triggering the feelings, you know, because like
because they're inconvenient and then you have to deal with them.
Yeah, and the thing is, because I haven't shown as well like emotional expressions, I've had people like, so they probably like say stuff or to try to upset me, and it hasn't. It's kind of gone over my head. So they're like ramping it up now because it's like, oh, you're really dumb. Don't you understand? I'm trying to piss you off. I'm having a go at you. It's like, eventually I'll probably work it out, you know. And it's like them friends as well who, like, they're gonna punish you by not calling you. It's like, I didn't even notice. It's like 3 months later, oh, I haven't heard from so and so. Oh, she must be busy anyway. Oh, fuck.
Yeah, I've always told people that I know, if they know I'm psychopathic, I'm going to, even if they don't, honestly, I'll just tell them, look, calling's going to be on you. I'm going to be honest with you. I will not call you. It's not mean. I'm not trying to be mean. I don't call my parents. It's not going to change for you. I would love to say, oh, I'll call you every week. No, it's never going to happen. I could put it on a schedule. I could set an alarm. It's not going to happen. I will find 50 things to do before I'm actually going to pick up that phone. So if you don't like that kind of relationship, I definitely am not the person for you. And it's not meant to be insulting. It's not meant to be a personal reflection on your value to me. It's just how I am. And I get the whole female emotion thing, man. And I also get the people trying to upset you. The problem with people doing that with me is I find it funny. And I tend to laugh, and they get very annoyed because they're trying to get me upset. And I find it very amusing. So that doesn't really work very well. If somebody points out that I do something stupid, I usually go, yeah, that was pretty dumb, huh? And I laugh, and they're like, I was trying to make you feel bad. Well, that was kind of...
No, sometimes I do feel a little dumb, though, because sometimes with certain things, it can take me a while to work out. And it's like, it just pops into my head. It's like, oh, I think so-and-so is trying to, like, upset me. Because I'll be like, why did they keep doing this thing? That's really weird. That's really odd behavior. And then I'll figure out that, oh, is that to get at me? It's like, oh, okay.
Well, that failed.
Next.
Failure. I sometimes have called people out on that. They're trying to get me worked up, and I'm just like, look, I understand you're trying to get me annoyed with you, but it's not going to happen. So I don't know. You can entertain yourself all you want. I'm going to play on my phone. I don't care what you're doing. Like, figure it out, work it out, go through your motions. When you feel better, let me know. We don't have time for this, though. It's kind of annoying. Yeah. As for you worrying about upsetting other people and hurting their feelings, honestly, from my perspective, that's kind of their problem. As long as you're not trying to be horrible, you're not trying to cause them problems, you're not responsible for their emotional life. Their emotional life is their own problem. And there's only so much you can do. And if you worry about whether or not you're going to hurt someone's feelings and you tiptoe all the time, it's really not going to get you anywhere. It's really their problem.
Yeah, I think like I've got to the stage now where it's like, if it happens just sort of by proxy, then yeah, it has to be on them, because it's true that it's true. Everything you're saying is true. I did come to that point where you just get to the point where it's like, well, what can you do? You got to live. You got to just do what you're doing. If people get upset, they get upset. If I obviously see something clearly that's like, a clear big trigger that I know that I can avoid, like, and I would avoid it. But if it's like little things, what I think are little things or insignificant things that upset them, then it upsets them, because I did get tired. It got tiring, but yeah, I don't bother with people much anyway, so I don't have that issue because I'm not really interacting with people very much at all.
Yeah. It being the steward of someone else's emotions is a duty that is not your responsibility. If it's your child or your significant other, okay, then you put more work into it. But in that case, you would think that you guys have communication, or with a child, you just sort of have to understand, okay, it's a kid. They have, very short experience in the world. Everything is the very worst they've ever experienced because it's the only thing they've ever experienced. So, okay, you can be a little bit more understanding there, but also understanding not to take it personally. With your significant other, you should have communication. But with other people, some people, it does not matter what you say or what you do. They're going to find a reason to be upset because that is their standard operating procedure.
Right. Yeah. So they're wired like that.
Yeah, they get a payoff from it. They enjoy, I wouldn't say that they enjoy it because they're upset, but they feel soothed in that state. They feel like their indignation and their, anger at the world is being heard, and so they perpetuate it. It's just how it is.
Yeah. Do you ever feel daunted, like answering your phone, or just sometimes there's like your phone ring or something, and you're just like, no, I don't want to answer this. I don't answer it now. I don't want to answer it. Do you ever feel
unless it's somebody I want to talk to, I'm not answering it. And there's still a chance I'm probably not going to answer it. I'm doing what I want to do. You can message me. I will get back to you when I'm ready.
Right. Yeah.
But
yeah.
I don't feel daunted by it. I was like, no.
Just no.
I'm busy. I don't care. I don't care what it is. If you need something desperately, you can text me and tell me what it is, and then I will decide whether or not I'm calling you back.
Right. Yeah.
I'm doing X, Y, or Z, and I don't care to talk to you.
Right. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. I'm like this. If someone calls me, usually my phone's always on silent anyway.
Same.
But if someone calls me and they don't leave a message, I won't get back to them because, as you said, if it was important, they should message me, as you said, and then, yeah. So
I'm just. You don't leave a message. You obviously didn't need to talk to me.
Right. Yeah.
I don't like leaving messages. Well, you know how a text works, right? You know how to push on the buttons and hit the enter button. Try that. I just want to hear your voice. Why?
Oh no! Just no.
Yeah. Why? Why do you need to hear my voice right now? I am busy. What part of my life do you think is required to give you a sampling of my voice? Here, I'll record it for you. You can listen to it whenever you want.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Say that again.
It's saying you don't need to hear from me.
All right. Yeah. Yeah, I was just thinking, it's gone now, but anyway, I don't think it was that important. But I think I'm gonna wind up now. I've really enjoyed this discussion.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's more things that I could think of, but I'm sorry about the delay. Yeah, there's probably more things that I could think of, but I think for now, I think you've covered loads of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that you've really helped to show the difference between the psychopath and the schizoid, and we can see that there's some areas where we have some overlaps.
Yes, for sure.
But there's also distinct differences as well. And do you want to talk a little bit about your Quora blog?
Well, mostly my blog is on Substack now. I do write a bit on Quora still, but for the most part, I'm over on Substack. And yeah, that's at Athena Walker. No, it's Eye of the Storm. That's right. So it's eyeofthestorm.com, Substack. I'm not sure how you search for it. I think you just search for Athena Walker and it will come right up. So
Cool.
people can find me there if they want to. And if you things you wanted to talk about, you can always message me. We could do it again sometime.
Cool, that'd be really good. Yeah. Thank you for your time today. And we'll leave it there. Okay. All right then. Bye.
Bye.